Welcome back to the channel. Today, we're going deep into the psychology of money. We are covering 10 powerful psychological principles that shape every financial decision you make, many of them completely below your level of conscious awareness. Did anyone explain why smart, educated, high-earning people go broke? Did anyone teach you why lottery winners are statistically more likely to be bankrupt within 5 years than the average person? Did anyone explain why doctors and lawyers and professional athletes, people earning 10 times the average salary, regularly end up with less wealth than a schoolteacher who invested quietly for 30 years? No, they did not. Because the most powerful forces shaping your financial life have nothing to do with math. They have nothing to do with interest rates or investment returns or tax strategies. And here is what makes this so dangerous. You cannot defend yourself against forces you do not know exist. That is exactly what today is about. I'm going to pull back the curtain on the psychology of money in a way that school never did and most finance channels never will. We're going deep today. We're going real. And by the end of this video, you will understand your own financial behavior better than 95% of the people around you. That understanding, I promise you, is worth more than any stock tip, any budget template, any investment strategy you will ever find. Stay with me all the way through, because this one is different. The answer is almost never about information. It is almost always about psychology. Let's find out what is really going on inside your financial mind. Lesson number 1. Your money story was written before you were 10 years old. The most powerful financial force in your life right now is something that happened to you before you were old enough to understand money at all. Psychologists and behavioral economists have studied this extensively, and the finding is consistent and remarkable. The foundational beliefs most adults carry about money, whether it is scarce or abundant, whether it is safe or dangerous, whether rich people are admirable or corrupt, whether spending is pleasure or guilt, were formed in early childhood, most before the age of 10. Think about the household you grew up in. Was money talked about openly, or was it a source of whispered stress and tension? When bills came in the mail, did the energy in the house change? Did you hear phrases like, "Money does not grow on trees. We cannot afford that. Rich people are greedy. You have to work hard your whole life just to survive"? Or did you hear, "Money is a tool. We invest first and spend what is left"? Wealth is built over time with patience and discipline. Those phrases, heard hundreds of times in childhood, became your financial operating system. They became the invisible code running in the background of every financial decision you make as an adult. Here's a real example of how this plays out. Someone who grew up watching a parent terrified of debt will often avoid all debt, even strategic low-interest debt that could accelerate wealth building. Someone who grew up watching a parent spend freely to feel good might develop the same emotional spending pattern as an adult, even while consciously knowing it is harmful. Someone who grew up hearing that rich people are greedy or corrupt might unconsciously self-sabotage their own wealth building, because deep down they do not want to become the kind of person they were taught to distrust. This is called your money script. And the extraordinary thing about money scripts is that they operate almost entirely below conscious awareness. You think you're making rational financial decisions, but underneath, your 10-year-old self is often the one actually in charge. Here is the work. Ask yourself honestly, what did money feel like in the house I grew up in? What messages, spoken and unspoken, did I absorb about money, wealth, and people who had it? Write it down. Look at it honestly, because you cannot rewrite a story you have never read. The first step to changing your financial future is understanding the financial past that is secretly shaping it. Lesson number 2, the pain of losing money is twice as powerful as the pleasure of gaining it. And this one is going to explain a lot of financial decisions that have probably puzzled you about yourself. In the 1970s, 2 psychologists named Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky conducted research that would eventually win a Nobel Prize in economics. Their discovery was called loss aversion. Here is what they found. For the average human being, The psychological pain of losing $100 is approximately twice as powerful as the psychological pleasure of gaining $100. Read that again. Losing feels twice as bad as winning feels good. And this single psychological quirk, this evolutionary survival mechanism that helped our ancestors avoid danger, is responsible for some of the most destructive financial behaviors in the modern world. Let me show you how loss aversion shows up in your financial life right now. You bought a stock. It has dropped 30%, and every rational analysis suggests it is going to keep dropping. But you cannot bring yourself to sell it. Why? Because selling makes the loss real. As long as you hold it, it is just a number on a screen. The moment you sell, you have actually lost. Loss aversion keeps you trapped in bad investments far longer than logic ever would. You have a terrible credit card with a high annual fee, but you have had it for 10 years, and it feels like closing it would mean losing something. Loss aversion keeps you paying for a financial product that is actively hurting you. You have a job you hate that is paying you significantly less than your skills are worth. But asking for a raise or leaving for a better opportunity feels like risking the security you have. Loss aversion keeps you financially stuck. Here is the even more dangerous version. Loss aversion can make people take enormous risks to avoid locking in a loss. The investor who holds a crashing stock hoping it will recover. The gambler who doubles their bet to win back what they lost. The homeowner who refuses to sell an underwater property and instead drains their savings. All of these are loss aversion in action, and all of them often turn moderate losses into catastrophic ones. Understanding loss aversion does not make you immune to it, but it gives you the ability to pause when you feel it activating and ask yourself, am I making this decision based on logic, or am I making it because I'm terrified of feeling the pain of loss? That pause is worth thousands of dollars over a lifetime. Lesson number 3, your lifestyle will always expand. Meet your income, the invisible wealth killer that affects people at every income level equally. In economics, this principle is called the hedonic treadmill. In behavioral finance, it is called lifestyle inflation. And understanding it might be the single most financially important thing you learn today. Here's how it works. You're earning $40,000 a year. Life feels tight. You think, if I could just earn $60,000, everything would be fine. I could save properly. I could invest. I could finally get ahead. You get a raise. You are now earning $60,000. For about 3 months, life feels dramatically better. The relief is real. You feel financially comfortable for the first time, and then something quiet happens. You move to a slightly nicer apartment because you can now afford it. You upgrade your car because the payment fits in the budget. You start eating out more because it is no longer a big deal. You buy nicer clothes because you feel like you deserve them. Your subscriptions multiply. Your weekend plans get more expensive. Your standards of normal slowly and invisibly rise. And 6 months later, at $60,000, you feel just as financially tight as you did at $40,000. Because your lifestyle has perfectly calibrated itself to consume your new income. This is the hedonic treadmill. You keep running. The pace keeps increasing, and you never actually get anywhere. Research by Princeton University found that beyond a certain income threshold, approximately $75,000 in their original study, additional income produces almost no measurable increase in day-to-day emotional well-being. Yet people consistently believe that earning just a little more will finally make them feel financially secure. The most financially successful people in America, the UK, and Canada have cracked this code. They allow their income to increase while keeping their lifestyle increases minimal. They let the gap between income and spending grow wider over time, rather than narrower, and they invest the difference. Warren Buffett still lives in the same house in Omaha, Nebraska that he purchased in 1958. He drives modest cars. He eats at McDonald's. This is not because he cannot afford extraordinary luxury. It is because he understood the hedonic treadmill early and refused to get on it. The question is not how much you earn. The question is how wide you can keep the gap between what you earn and what you spend. That gap, and only that gap, is what builds wealth. Lesson number 4, mental accounting. Why you treat money differently depending on where it came from, a psychological quirk that costs people enormous amounts of money without them ever realizing it. This concept is called mental accounting. It was identified by Nobel Prize-winning economist Richard Thaler. And once you understand it, you will see it everywhere in your own financial behavior. Mental accounting is the tendency for people to treat identical amounts of money differently based on where that money came from or what category they have mentally assigned it to. Let me give you some examples that will probably feel uncomfortably familiar. You receive a $2,000 tax refund. You spend on a vacation, a new TV, and some clothes within 2 weeks. But if someone asked you to take $2,000 from your savings account and spend it on those same things, you would never do it. The money is identical. But because the tax refund felt like a windfall, like found money, it felt fundamentally different to spend. You win $300 at a casino. You go on to lose $250 of it without feeling too bad. After all, it was gambling money. But if you had walked in and immediately lost $250 of your own money, you would have walked out immediately. You have $5,000 in a savings account earning 4% interest, and you have $5,000 in credit card debt at 22% interest. Mathematically, you're losing money every single month by not using those savings to pay off the card. But the savings account feels like security and the credit card feels like a separate problem. Mental accounting keeps people in this exact situation for years. Here is the financial truth that mental accounting obscures. A dollar is a dollar. Regardless of whether it came from your paycheck, a tax refund, a gift, a casino win, or a savings account, it has the exact same mathematical value and deserves to be treated with the exact same intentionality. The practical application is powerful. Every time you receive any money, ask yourself, would I make the same spending decision with this money if it had come from my main paycheck? If the answer is no, that is mental accounting distorting your judgment. Pause, reconsider, and make the decision your future self would be proud of. Lesson number 5, social comparison is silently bankrupting people, the most dangerous financial force of the social media age. Human beings are deeply social creatures. For hundreds of thousands of years of evolution, our survival literally depended on how we compared to the people around us. Our relative status within our group was a matter of life and death. That evolutionary drive to compare ourselves to others has not disappeared. It has just found a new and far more dangerous arena to play out in. Social media. Every day, the average American, British, and Canadian spends hours scrolling through a curated highlight reel of other people's lives. The vacations, the new cars, the kitchen renovations, the designer outfits, the restaurant dinners, the luxury hotel rooms, and somewhere in the brain, that ancient comparison mechanism activates, and it whispers, everyone else is doing better than you. Everyone else is further ahead. You are falling behind. Economists have a phrase for this, keeping up with the Joneses. But the Joneses used to just be your actual neighbors on your actual street. Now the Joneses are every aspirational lifestyle influencer, every successful-looking former classmate, every carefully curated Instagram account broadcasting a life of effortless abundance. And here is the devastating financial consequence. People are spending money. They do not have to buy things. They do not need to impress people. They do not actually like to maintain an image of success they cannot actually afford. A study from Charles Schwab found that 59% of Americans admit that social media influences them to spend money they had not planned to spend. In the UK, research by the Money and Mental Health Policy Institute found a direct link between social media use and problematic spending behaviors. The financial destruction this causes is enormous. Credit card debt taken on for vacations that were photographed and shared before the bill even arrived. Car payments stretched to the absolute limit of affordability because the vehicle needed to look a certain way. Homes purchased in neighborhoods that required 2 incomes stretched to breaking point because the zip code mattered more than the financial reality. Here is what social media never shows you. The anxiety behind the vacation photos. The credit card statement that arrived when the tan faded. The arguments about money that happened behind the beautifully decorated doors of the upgraded home. The antidote to social comparison is not willpower. It is a deliberately cultivated clarity about your specific values, your specific goals, and your specific definition of a good life. When you know precisely what you are building toward and why, other people's highlight reels lose their power over you. Because you're too focused on your own path to be derailed by the appearance of someone else's. Lesson number 6, the present bias. Why your future self feels like a stranger, the psychological bias that is quietly stealing your retirement. Behavioral economists have identified a fundamental quirk in human psychology that has enormous financial consequences. It is called present bias, and it means that human beings are hardwired to dramatically overvalue things available right now compared to the same things available in the future. In simple terms, your brain treats your future self almost like a different person, a stranger, someone who will deal with the consequences of your present decisions so that you do not have to. This is why retirement savings are so psychologically difficult. Choosing between $100 right now versus $110 in 1 month. Most people take the $100 immediately. But when asked to choose between $100 in 12 months versus $110 in 13 months, most people will wait the extra month for the $110. The math is identical. The time gap is identical. But the presence of an immediate option fundamentally changes the decision. When something is available right now, the brain assigns it dramatically more value than logic would justify. Present bias is why people know intellectually that they should be contributing to their 401k in America, their pension in the UK, their RRSP in Canada, but instead spend that money on immediate pleasures. The retirement contribution goes to a stranger 40 years in the future. The concert tickets are available this weekend. Present bias is why people eat the unhealthy food, skip the gym, and procrastinate on the important financial decisions. The benefit is distant and abstract. The pleasure or relief is immediate and concrete. Here is the strategy that research consistently shows works best against present bias. Make the future vivid and concrete. Studies have shown that people who look at digitally aged photos of themselves, showing what they will look like at 60 or 70, significantly increase their retirement contributions. Because suddenly the future self feels real. Feels like them, not a stranger. Write a letter to your 70-year-old self. Describe the financial life you are building for them. Make your future self a real person with real feelings and real consequences depending on the decisions you make today. And automate every important financial behavior so that present bias never even gets a vote. Automatic retirement contributions. Automatic savings transfers. Automatic investment purchases. When the decision is made automatically, present bias has no power over it. Lesson number 7, scarcity mindset versus abundance mindset. The mindset divide that separates people who build wealth from people who struggle with money forever. Harvard economist Sindel Mullainathan and Princeton psychologist Eldar Shaffer wrote a groundbreaking book called Scarcity, and their research revealed something profound about the psychology of financial struggle. When people feel that they do not have enough money, enough time, enough resources, a scarcity mindset takes over. And this mindset fundamentally changes the way the brain works. Under scarcity, the brain becomes intensely focused on the immediate shortage. Just like a starving person can think of almost nothing but food, a person in financial scarcity can think of almost nothing but the immediate money problem in front of them. This intense focus is called tunneling. The problem with tunneling is that it simultaneously causes the brain to neglect everything outside the tunnel. The person focused entirely on paying this month's rent cannot think clearly about next month's investment opportunity. The person overwhelmed by immediate debt cannot process long-term financial planning. The tunnel is so consuming that the peripheral vision, where long-term financial well-being lies, goes completely dark. This is profoundly important because it means that financial struggle is not simply caused by lack of money. It is also caused by what scarcity does to the decision-making brain. And this creates a tragic self-reinforcing cycle. Scarcity produces a scarcity mindset. The scarcity mindset produces poor decisions. Poor decisions produce more scarcity. Now let me talk about the abundance mindset, because this term gets misused constantly in motivational content, and I want to give you the real version. An abundance mindset is not about pretending you have money you do not have. It is not about positive thinking your way to wealth. It is about genuinely believing, based on evidence, that resources, opportunities, and solutions exist and can be found. The abundance mindset produces a fundamentally different set of behaviors. Instead of asking, "How do I survive this month?" the abundance mindset asks, "How do I improve my situation systematically over time?" Instead of feeling that every financial decision is zero-sum, either I can pay the electricity bill or buy groceries, the abundance mindset looks for creative third options. More income, better deals, temporary sacrifices that unlock long-term gains. The shift from scarcity to abundance mindset is not a one-time decision. It is a daily practice. It is choosing deliberately to look for what is possible instead of only seeing what is missing. And crucially, it is creating enough breathing room in your finances through budgeting, emergency savings, and debt elimination that the scarcity tunnel begins to widen. Because the best cure for a scarcity mindset is actually becoming less scarce. Lesson number 8, the paradox of choice. Why more options leads to worse financial decisions, the counterintuitive truth about financial decision making that most people never consider. Psychologist Barry Schwartz wrote a book called The Paradox of Choice, and his central finding was remarkable. More choices do not make people happier or produce better decisions. Beyond a certain point, more choices produce anxiety, paralysis, and regret. In the financial world, this paradox has devastating real-world consequences. The most studied example is retirement plan participation. Research by Shlomo Benartzi and Richard Thaler found that when employers offered employees a 401k plan with 6 investment fund choices, participation rates were high and people actually made selections and invested. When the number of fund choices increased to 60 or more, participation rates dropped significantly. And the people who did participate often made worse choices, defaulting to whatever was listed first or whatever had the highest recent returns, because the cognitive burden of evaluating 60 options was simply too overwhelming. This is called decision fatigue. When the brain is forced to make too many complex decisions, it eventually gives up and either avoids the decision entirely or makes an impulsive choice just to end the discomfort. Think about how this shows up in your own financial life. You have been meaning to set up an investment account for months. But every time you sit down to do it, you're faced with so many platform choices, fund choices, account type choices, contribution choices, that you close the laptop and tell yourself you will figure out later. And later never comes. You want to build a budget, but there are 40 different budgeting apps, 5 different budgeting methods, and endless conflicting advice about which approach is right. The paralysis of choice keeps you from starting any of them. Here is the powerful solution that research consistently supports. Simplify ruthlessly. For investing, choose one low-cost broad index fund and automate contributions. For budgeting, choose one method and follow it for 90 days before evaluating anything else. For banking, use the minimum number of accounts necessary to manage your money effectively. The perfect financial plan you never execute is infinitely less valuable than the good financial plan you actually implement consistently. Simplify, automate, execute, repeat. Lesson number 9, instant gratification versus delayed gratification. The wealth-defining divide, the single most predictive factor in long-term financial success. In the 1960s and 1970s, psychologist Walter Mischel conducted a series of experiments at Stanford University that became some of the most famous in the history of psychology. These experiments are now known as the marshmallow test. Children between 4 and 6 years old were placed in a room with a single marshmallow. They were told, You can eat this marshmallow right now. Or, if you wait 15 minutes without eating it, you will receive a second marshmallow. The researchers then left the room and watched. Some children ate the marshmallow immediately. Others tried to resist and eventually gave in. Some successfully waited the full 15 minutes and received the second marshmallow. What made these experiments extraordinary was the follow-up. Decades later, the researchers tracked down the original participants, and they found that the children who had successfully delayed gratification, who waited for the second marshmallow, had on average significantly higher SAT scores, lower rates of substance abuse, better health outcomes, lower divorce rates, and significantly higher incomes and net worth than the children who had eaten the marshmallow immediately. The ability to delay gratification, to choose a larger future reward over a smaller immediate one, turned out to be one of the most powerful predictors of life's success ever identified. And in the financial world, this principle is everything. The person who invests $500 this month instead of taking a weekend trip is choosing the second marshmallow. The person who drives a used car for another 3 years instead of financing a new one is choosing the second marshmallow. The person who builds their emergency fund before buying the new phone is choosing the second marshmallow. And compounded over decades, the people who consistently choose the second marshmallow end up with investment portfolios, paid-off homes, and financial security that feels almost miraculous to people around them who spent their whole lives eating the first marshmallow. Now, here is the crucial nuance that the original marshmallow research missed and later researchers corrected. The ability to delay gratification is not purely an innate personality trait that you either have or you do not. Research shows that it is powerfully influenced by your environment, specifically by whether you trust that the second marshmallow will actually be delivered. Children from unstable environments, where promised rewards frequently did not materialize, rationally ate the first marshmallow immediately. Why wait for something that probably will not come? This means that building the infrastructure of trust and reliability into your financial life, consistent savings systems, automatic investments, clear goals with visible progress, actually trains and develops your capacity for financial delayed gratification. You're not stuck with wherever you are on this spectrum right now. You can build this capacity deliberately, one decision at a time. Lesson number 10, the power of financial narrative. The story you tell yourself about money. Lesson number 10, the deepest and most transformative lesson of all. Every decision you have ever made about money, every purchase, every investment, every financial choice was preceded by a story. A narrative you told yourself, often in a fraction of a second, that made the decision feel justified, necessary, or inevitable. I deserve this because I worked hard this week. I need this to feel better right now. I will save more next month when things are less busy. People like me do not end up wealthy. That is for other people. I'm just not good with money. It is who I am. One purchase will not make a difference. Life is short. You cannot take it with you. These narratives are not innocent background noise. They are the actual mechanism through which psychological biases and emotional patterns translate into financial behavior. The story always comes first. The behavior follows the story. And here is what makes this so powerful once you understand it. If you can change the story, you can change the behavior. This is not wishful thinking. This is the foundation of cognitive behavioral therapy, the most evidence-based psychological intervention in the world. The relationship between thoughts, emotions, and behaviors is not fixed. It is malleable. It can be changed through awareness and deliberate practice. The most financially successful people in America, the UK, and Canada share certain narrative patterns about money. They tell themselves stories that produce wealth-building behavior. Things like, every dollar I do not spend today is a seed I am planting for my future. Building wealth slowly is a game I am winning. I choose to live below my means because I value freedom more than appearances. My financial decisions today are a gift to my future self. These are not delusional affirmations. They're deliberate narrative choices, alternative framings that produce alternative behaviors, that produce alternative outcomes. Begin paying attention to the stories you tell yourself about money. Not to judge them, but to observe them with curiosity. Where did this story come from? Is it actually true? Is it serving my future? Or is it the voice of a scared 10-year-old who learned about money in a house where money was scary? You get to choose the story, and the story you choose will determine, more than any other single factor, what your financial life looks like 20 years from now. Now let me show you how all 10 of these psychological lessons connect into a single, coherent picture of why people struggle financially and what actually changes everything. Most financial problems are not caused by a lack of information. People know they should save. People know they should invest. People know debt at 24% interest is destroying them. The information is available, is free, is everywhere. What keeps people financially stuck is the invisible architecture of their financial psychology. The money script from childhood telling them wealth is not for people like them. Loss aversion keeping them frozen in bad financial decisions. The hedonic treadmill consuming every raise before it can build wealth. Mental accounting making them treat identical money completely differently. Social comparison driving spending to maintain an image. Present bias making retirement feel irrelevant. Scarcity mindset narrowing their thinking. Paradox of choice creating paralysis. Instant gratification winning against their long-term interests. And disempowering narratives justifying all of it. These are the real barriers. And no budget spreadsheet has ever addressed a single one of them. The good news, and there is genuinely extraordinary good news here, is that every single one of these psychological patterns can be identified, examined, and changed. Not overnight, not perfectly, but progressively and powerfully over time. The people who build genuine financial well-being in their lives are not smarter than you. They are not luckier than you. They're not more disciplined than you by nature. They are simply people who, at some point, became aware of these forces and decided to work with their psychology instead of against it. That is what you now have the opportunity to do. Subscribe and drop a comment below. Which of these 10 lessons hit you the hardest? Which one felt like it was written specifically about you? I read every single comment, and I genuinely want to know. Thank you for being here today. I will see you in the next video.